Good. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. And yeah, my name was like a Greek person. That was amazing. So today I'm going to speak about my PhD research. Just give me a second to share my screen. Yeah, so my research is in a very recent stage because I'm on my second year, so I have a lot of things to do. My main objective is to understand which immersion techniques are most impactful regarding communication of archaeological research to the wider public. In order to do this, I will create and evaluate three different types of immersive storytelling, essentially a straightforward textual narrative, an interactive story using Twine, and a virtual reality immersive experience. And all three will be about the same individual, and they will pretty much have the same information. So far, I've already created the textual narrative, and I just finished the Twine story, which I will present in a minute. First, some things about my case study. So we will go from Scotland to Mycenae. um, my case study is a cemetery, a Bronze Age cemetery in Greece. It's called Grave Circle Lane, and it's at Mycenae. It's northeast Peloponnese. You can see Mycenae here with the red dot, and a closer look of the citadel, the Acropolis. And that's how Grave Circle Lane, the cemetery, looks from above. I won't bother you much with the chronology. Essentially, it's a Middle Bronze Age, late Middle Bronze Age, and early late Bronze Age cemetery. Imagine that it's around, it was in use around the 1500 BC. So here is a closer look. The cemetery had only 6 graves that contained 9 men, 8 women, 2 children, and they were buried along with 30 pounds of pure gold, molded into fine jewelry, golden masks, chest plates. And the main protagonist is going to be this guy here with the letter T. He was buried with the golden mask above, which is called, its famous mask, it's called the Agamemnon's mask. And the skeletons were examined initially when excavated by Schliemann and Stamatakis in 19th century, so it's a very old excavation. Then by Angel in 1937, and then again in 2007 by a small team led by Dr. Naflioti, who used isotope analysis in order to identify the geographical origins of the individuals and understand if they were local or non-local. So very recent osteological reports are available, which is very convenient. So some things about my methodology. My theoretical framework is based, but not limited, to principles of bioarchaeology, archaeology of personhood and embodiment, public archaeology, and the archaeological site is a prehistoric one, so essential information is missing. I'm going to cover these gaps using osteological reports that, as I said, we have very recent. Inscriptions on linear B tablets, which was the language used by the Mycenaeans, Homeric epics and depictions of everyday life and burial customs. I won't go into much detail about how am I going to use these tools, but if someone is interested, of course, we can talk about that more. So the tools for the immersion that I'm going to use, as I said, a straightforward narrative, an interactive narrative using Twine, and a virtual reality. I included an example of the straightforward narrative, but I won't go much into detail, just to have a look how it looks like, essentially. So I have the story and I have footnotes to back up the evidence why I am saying specific things. in order for the user to know which is my imagination and what is real, like archaeological evidence. So let's go to Twine. So on the right, you can see my story, how my story looks like. It starts on the top and it ends on the middle bottom. Why I decided to use Twine? So my main problem when I created the textual narrative was that it was built more as a monologue. And for that reason, I had to make a lot of interpretation of the archaeological data in order to present my story to the user. For example, I had to give my character a name in order for the story to be engaging. I also had to present him in a very particular way, for example, as if he was the son of a wealthy man, or that he died from a specific disease. These are things that are not necessarily false, but not necessarily true. They are just interpretations of archaeological evidence, both skeletal and burial. I tried to tackle this matter with the footnotes that you saw, and then I thought to give Twine a try and see if I could remedy some of these issues. So my main objectives, as you can see, is to give information about the Mycenaean life, Middle and Late Bronze Age, avoid presenting the evidence with archaeological authority, and try to show the evidence to the user while also present the uncertainty of archaeological research, especially when it comes to prehistory, and to keep in mind authenticity as much as possible, hence try to avoid implying details, for example, the individual's name, and to see if Twine would be an easy and effective tool to communicate archaeological research. So the tools that I used, Twine is pretty straightforward. The coding requirements are not much of a trouble. I used some other tools like Canva and Wix.com for images, and YouTube and Epidemic Sound in order to be able to add audio and music to the story. The whole project is not the final one, but it's a draft version of it, and it took around like 3 days to be made. The whole background research, of course, took much, much more, but I mean like the actual coding and putting the images and the videos and the sound. So it's not that time consuming. So with no further ado, let's have a look at the game. I wish I could have you all to play the game and give direct feedback, but I believe something like that wouldn't be like possible given the circumstances, but we'll see. So the artistic part is rather primitive. It requires a lot of coding to move things around, which I'm not very familiar with yet. But I do hope to improve this final project. I'm still very proud of my painting, like have color and be able to think, but okay. I made my character having amnesia because it was very easy for that reason to have a name. And about getting to know who the individual was, who was his name, his identity. So as you can see, there are a lot of stuff, plenty information that they can be clicked and see more stuff about that, or they can be skipped, goes to the contact and then online. And the main idea is that the user can have access to both the skeletal evidence and the archaeological report and compare stuff and extract information. So he can have access, or she can have access to actual photographs of the excavation and to skeletal evidence, but the skeletal evidence have some more information in them. So for example, if the skeletal evidence say that there are plastic lines, I also give information about her plastic lines. Yes, thank you. You don't think much. Again, they can see the actual evidence. So yeah, that's pretty much is. I won't show you the end of it. You have to play it, unfortunately. So the benefits of using Twine. It was a very easy tool to use in order to create a story and effectively communicate archaeological research. So the user can be directly exposed to the archaeological evidence rather than to read the archaeologist's interpretation of them. It's very creative, very engaging. It can be modified to be expanded or reduced depending on the intended audience or the preferences of the user. And also it allows the creator to be more vague when needed. For example, if I don't want to say the name, when I don't have the answers, I can be vague. And I believe it manages to transfer the archaeologist's perspective and frustration about not having all the answers. The limitations, so I still live in the excitement of creating this game, so I'm not quite objective at this point. Hopefully, a lot of issues are going to arise after testing it. At first glance, there are ethical and authenticity issues, with the most obvious being that I had to create a specific persona for the character that most probably has nothing to do with the actual personality of the individual, and that there is a certain level of my own interpretation of the archaeological evidence, of course, which is rather inevitable as being subjective is part of the archaeologist's reality. Next steps, I will need to create a virtual reality experience with the same storyline and information as both the textual narrative and train story, to design and develop an evaluation methodology, of course, and test all three media on specific groups to understand their impact and learning outcomes. So thank you very much, and do keep be in touch if you need anything more.